Normally, when I do a reaction review, I like to have kind of an overarching theme or have something kind of unusual or different than how I think most people would review a movie. But in this case, I couldn't really come up with one, so we're just going to go through the movie and hopefully I'll be able to offer some good commentary as we move along. But yeah, this is one I've been meaning to do for the last week since I saw it. I've just kind of been letting it roll around in my head. So before I begin, is this a good movie? This is a great movie. I give this a solid 8 out of 10. I highly recommend you go watch it. This is M. Night Shyamalan at his best. Now, M. Night Shyamalan is interesting because sometimes he does good stuff. I haven't seen Unbreakable, but people tell me it's good. Sixth Sense was good. I haven't seen Signs, shamefully enough, but I've heard it's pretty good. So, a lot of his movies are good. A lot of his movies are complete shit. And it's kind of just he's a mixed bag director. I think he's probably a bit like Michael Bay, where he does have innate talent. He just needs someone to put him on a leash. He needs someone to just go, this is a really, really bad idea. You can't do this. And he just, if he has somebody to kind of restrain him, I think he can be fairly competent. But like I said, that's kind of the issue with him. So Split is the story of a serial killer who has 23 personalities. And the movie begins with him kidnapping three children, or three teenagers. We have Claire, Marcia, and Casey. Claire and Marcia are basically interchangeable. One of them's kind of like the blonde, super popular girl. The other one is, I think she's black. I couldn't tell if she was black or Filipino, to be perfectly honest. That can be difficult, but they're just finishing a birthday party for one of them, and the three of them get into a car, and as they're getting into the car, their father is the father of the blonde popular girl gets sprayed in the face with chlorophyll and moved out of the way. And our main villain, we'll just call him Dennis because he has a bunch of personalities, gets into the car and he proceeds to spray the two girls in the back seat with chloroform, knocking them out. Now, the third girl, Casey, who's played by Anna Tyler Joy, who's an absolutely gorgeous actress, she has kind of a very unusual appearance. Let me just, while I'm talking, let me see if I can find a good picture of her. She's very unusual just because of the way her eyes are. But I think she is English, actually. And she was also in The Witch. Let me see if I can find a good picture of her. Yeah, here's a good picture of her. Yeah, see, kind of an unusual appearance. But I find her pretty attractive, and she looked really good in this movie. But she, unlike the other two girls, she doesn't really panic. She just kind of sits there and stares at the guy. And there's kind of a long, tense moment. And she opens the door, but she doesn't really try to escape, even though she probably could. And ultimately, he does chloroform her and take her away. The three girls wake up in a basement dungeon. They're in a room with three beds and a washroom, and they're not really sure how they got there. A man comes in having a very reserved, immaculate appearance, and basically tells them that they're going to be kept there until they can be, because they are the sacred offerings. And after that, he disappears and he comes back in the form of a little kid. And the little kid is, I think his name is, sorry, it's kind of confusing to understand what some of his personalities are at a certain point. Heinrich, I think his name is. So Heinrich comes back as a little kid, and Casey attempts to turn the little kid persona against the Dennis persona, which is the serial killer one. And that kind of goes in an interesting fashion, and she sort of succeeds but sort of doesn't. And then there's also a female persona called, let me see here, what was sorry, it's hard to keep, Patricia. So then there's also Patricia, who's the female personality, and they see him dressed up in drag. So while this is going on, he goes to see his psychiatrist, and I'll just call her the doctor, who's an old Swipple woman who, as she literally stated, I forgot for didn't have a family because I chose a different path. My family is my patients. So that's a bad sign right away. So she treats people with this dissociative identity disorder or multiple personalities, which is a good topic for a movie as it's a very interesting and kind of poorly understood condition. I don't pretend to understand it. I can kind of sympathize because bipolar disorder does feel like you have two completely different personalities. Back before I was taking medication, I had kind of my manic personality, which was extremely aggressive, angry. It detested weakness and it looked for opportunities to basically tear people apart. And it was filled with just a complete and despising of humanity and megalomania. And then the depressive personality, which had extremely low self-esteem, was a lot more kind though and passive, and just kind of sought to get along with people and was kind of lonely. Whereas my manic persona was completely unwilling to be close to people at all. It also should be noted that my manic persona had absolutely no interest in ever getting married, whereas my depressive did. And since I've started taking medication for it, specifically for bipolar disorder, there has been kind of a merger of the two. But just my experience. So the doctor works with people with multiple personalities. Now, I think in general, the psychiatric approach to multiple personalities is to try to get them merged together to reform the original, but she just treats them all as if they're completely different people. And she speaks at conferences, and basically she believes that multiple personality disorder is basically kind of supernatural, and that by the power of having multiple personas, people can possess tons of different skills, people can change their physical appearance, can change their body chemistry, can change kind of their muscular mass just by flipping between different personas. And this is obviously a very controversial view. And she's considered a quack in her industry. So we're introduced to our main character. So we learn a bit about the background of our serial killer, whose core identity, I guess, was born Kevin Rumple Grump, but he suffered severe physical and sexual abuse as a kid, and to protect himself, he divided his mind up into 23 different personas, which emerged in response to certain things being needed. In particular, Dennis, who's the persona we deal with for most of the movie, came out of a need to protect himself, so he's extremely cold, calculating, and aggressive. The kind of the main persona, which is probably the most similar to the original Kevin, is Barry, who's I think kind of like metrosexual and is obsessed with fashion and speaks with a very flamboyant accent. So for a lot of the movie, Dennis is playing as Barry, who's pretending to be Barry. So he goes to see the doctor, who says, you emailed me and said it was an emergency. And since it's Dennis pretending to be Barry, he basically says, no, that was just an accident. I just got stressed out and it was too much for me. And the doctor, as the movie progresses, tends to start to think that she keeps getting emails panicking from Barry, or from Kevin telling her to stop him. And probably what happens is one of his more gentle personalities is in control, and they send the email out to try to get them to stop him. It's interesting because the different personas have different memories, but they can talk to each other. It's described as there being all his personas sit in a chair, and occasionally a light shines on them, and that person gets control of the body. And Barry normally chooses that, and he has banished kind of the violent personalities to the dark, but the kid, sorry, his name's not Heinrich, it's Hedwig, is able to also put people into the light. So Hedwig has decided to side with his darker personalities and is helping them kind of come to the forefront. So we go through just a bunch of scenes. We have a lot of flashbacks of Casey, who's our main character, and we discover that she's engaged in extensive self harm over her life. Also, that she's been sexually abused since she was very young by her uncle, and despite that, she hasn't developed schizophrenia yet, but she would frequently get in trouble at school so she could stay really late at detention and not have to go home to her uncle who sexually molests her. So she seems the least affected by the situation as she's just trading one kind of captor for another, and her attempts to get out are normally the most effective when she goes for them. So they try a couple different things to get out. They succeed in using a high heeled shoe to break a piece of drywall in the ceiling and then crawl through the vents. They the Filipino slash black girl succeeds when they're being fed of taking a chair and smacking Dennis with it and then trying to run away. It always irritates me in these movies where they like get the drop on the bad guy and they like hit him and he's lying on the ground. But rather than killing him or otherwise beating the shit out of him until he can't do anything else, they decide to run. I guess fight or flight, but like later in the movie, Casey hits him with a baseball bat and knocks him over. And rather than just smashing his head until he's dead, she tries to like pick up a phone and like call somebody. I don't really get it. The blonde girl's idea was that they should all attack Dennis at the same time and just try to kill him that way. And he brings them like some cleaner, like some strong bathroom cleaner, so they could like hide behind the door, and when he comes in, they could both spray him in the eyes with this like corrosive substance and then just all jump on him and beat the shit out of him. Granted, he's stronger than any of them, but he is still vulnerable. I mean, he's not a god. I'm sure they could come up with some way of taking him down, but they never really do. So Casey tries to befriend Hedwig and gets him to take her to his room so they can listen to CDs together. And what kind of happens in that case is Hedwig shows her his radio, and it's a walkie-talkie. And it's around this time we figure out that Dennis is working in some kind of basement at a industrial facility. I don't know if it's like a big building and he's the caretaker, or if it's like a factory or something, but he has this massive area that he takes care of. So she goes on the radio. She's like, "Help me, I'm being held hostage. I'm Casey Cook. You've probably seen me on the news." And the guy on the other end is a Dindu, and he's like, "Shit, who the hell using this radio?" She's like, "Please help me. This crazy guy's gonna kill me." He's like, "Damn. The white woman is yelling." And then he just doesn't help her because he's a Dindu. So that happens. And then just as the film kind of progresses, the doctor figures out more and more that Dennis is probably behind something. And she has like a big scene where she praises him for being strong and for protecting Kevin. And she mentions that she kind of has a nuclear weapon where if she says his original name, it'll destroy the balance of the personalities and basically send him into a downward spiral. Dennis and Patricia and Hedwig are all talking about a figure called the Beast. The Beast is the final persona of Kevin and is not a human persona. It's a, I guess, a beast slash attempt at kind of a god persona. Something beyond what would normally be considered human. And Kevin claims in this state that he becomes impervious to bullets. He can climb on walls. He gains basically superhuman abilities. And the doctor dismisses it as being a Jungian archetype. Eventually what happens is all the girls are locked in different rooms and he stops feeding them. And he tells them that they are all going to be sacrificed to the beast who will eat them and gain their powers. So the doctor comes and tries to talk to him, and she finds out that the girls are being trapped there. And rather than call the police or use his name to send him down. She just kind of doesn't do anything, and she's just like, "Oh, Dennis, this is really mean. This is really bad. You shouldn't be doing this." And like any white woman, she's trying to save someone with no agency, and that's what she devoted her life to doing. So she gets the crap kicked out of her and chloroform, so she's just completely out of it. So Dennis goes and he buys some flowers and he lays them down in front of a intercity train that opens, and as a kind of an offering or a welcome to the beast. So he walks into the train and takes off his shirt, and he transforms into the beast persona, and it appears that it is indeed real. His muscles get bigger, he becomes stronger, and he jumps off of the train and starts exhibiting superhuman endurance and speed. So he makes it all the way back to the apartment, upon which time Casey has succeeded in getting out of where she is and looks at his computer, in which he finds recordings of all the different personas talking in different fashions. So while all that's happening, the doctor succeeds in waking up, and she writes his actual name on a piece of paper along with "say the words." So then the beast comes in and he starts crawling on the ceiling because he can. And she takes a knife and starts stabbing him with it. But his skin has become impervious to knives, and the knife merely shatters. He then kills her, and he proceeds to eat the other two girls except for Casey. Casey succeeds in using his name, which briefly makes him revert to Kevin, his original personality, and then he begins cycling through all the other personalities. While he's briefly Kevin, he tells her to get a shotgun he has and to load it and to kill him because he's become a complete and total monster. So she starts doing that, and as she's running to get the shells and stuff, the beast reemerges and chases her throughout the building. She manages to reach the exit, but the door at the exit is barred from the outside and she can't get through. So she uses the shotgun and succeeds in shooting the beast twice, making a big hole in his chest, but it begins to regenerate almost immediately, and it doesn't stop him. She's managed to lock herself in a cage with thick steel bars, and the beast is bending them. However, he notices, because she had lost her coat in the shuffle, or I think he tears it off when he's clawing at her, that her body is covered in scars from self-harm. He then laughs and says that she is pure and she is a kindred spirit to him, and he does not eat the pure. He then, smiling, darts off into the night. Someone comes in and, hearing the commotion, succeeds in letting Casey out of the basement, and then you find out that it was the heater underneath the zoo of whatever the city was they're in. I think it was Chicago, so I think it's the Chicago Zoo, maybe. But as she's being led away, we're treated to the Dindu from earlier, and he's like, "Oh shit, she actually was in trouble? Damn." So that happens, and the police believe everything because they find the corpses and stuff. And so Casey doesn't have the courage yet to tell the police about her abusive uncle, so she's sent back to him. And as the movie ends and we're in the credit scene, we see Bruce Willis sitting in a diner watching the TV screen, and is reporting about Dennis. And it says, due to his multiple personalities, the serial killer, otherwise known as Kevin Rumple Grump, is now being called the Horde. And Bruce Willis's character remarks, "The Horde kind of reminds me of that criminal from a decade ago named Mr. Glass." So this movie is actually a semi-sequel to Unbreakable, and the start of like an M. Night Shyamalan extended universe. So it's interesting. I did not see that coming. What's nice is that that was the twist, and that's a pretty innocuous twist. We didn't have some like goofy shit like he was actually an alien the whole time, or I don't know, like I was thinking maybe Casey would wind up being him and the whole thing was a delusion and that he could like change his form that much. Or maybe the Doctor was a persona, but there really wasn't anything like that outlandish. The fact that it takes place in the same universe as Unbreakable is weird and kind of it's a bit of a twist, but given that like supernatural stuff kind of happened in Unbreakable, there's nothing really wrong with it per se. And I don't know, I'm excited. M. Night Shyamalan said he wants to do a movie that's a crossover between the two, and I'm actually pretty excited to see it. If it's anywhere near as good as this movie, and M. Night Shyamalan continues to produce quality content, I think he might have actually redeemed himself. The movie made a lot of money. It only cost $10 million to make, and it's made $110 million. Not exactly one of the most highest grossing movies of all time, but it did make like 11 times its budget back, which is pretty impressive for any film. And more important than that, I think it gives M. Night Shyamalan some credit as still being a man who's able to make a decent film. So hopefully they'll give him more projects in the future, and whoever he worked with who was able to kind of restrain him and to get him to actually produce something of quality, hopefully that person continues to keep a leash on M. Night Shyamalan. So that's kind of my thoughts on Split. I hope you enjoyed it. This is Argent signing out.